Basically, we have, let's say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes to discuss. It's now another kind of moment of this round table, and it's your time. We have these people here, and I think that you have questions, you have commentaries, you have suggestions to do to our... As you can see, my first impression was that this was like more or less as a battle of giants, as you can see, because we have basically France and Arte and France Television, we have NFB, Canada, we have Australia, that to me maybe they are the main investors and the main broadcasters in this field. And we have another point of view perspective from Susanna, from a laboratory of production, which is a consolidated and a well-known laboratory, let's say one of the 3 or 4 initiatives in Europe that to me are more outstanding. So having these people here, I ask you if you have some questions to them, or maybe I can start with my question, which is very provocative. Some of you have questions, or do you want to, yeah? Or yeah, I see someone that say, okay, I have one question. So let's go ahead. We have a mic there for her. If you can tell your name, please. And
hi, my name is Hannah. I come from Playground magazine. It's I'll tell you about it eventually. Maybe I'll meet some of you. My main question is, who is your audience in each of your different broadcasting conglomerates and companies and organizations? If you could define a persona, stereotypical type of audience for your media.
Mike, 1, 2. Yeah, we do define persona, starting from the creation, the grounds of the creation, and we're pretty precise on who we want to reach. As I was saying, the public is at the core of our creation. If no interaction happens, no project is alive, basically. Because we're quite young within the NFB, our main goal is really 18 to 35, like really roughly put. We prefer to think of it as reaching specific sensibilities. So we have a range of sensibilities and preoccupation we wanna target when we go into different projects. And this is how we design the project. So usually the creator has to answer those. And when we work at the end of the project, testing it with the audience and speaking with our marketing people, it has to, sometimes it evolves to the project. One specific example is we wanted to design a game about social innovation. It started for 25 to 35 and it ended to more like 5 to 15 or maybe even younger. So it shifts, but this is how we work it usually. And more like into terms of real numbers. Depending on the project, what we see is, well, some of the projects we've done do not track. We've done 2 million unique visitors with quite a good rate of engagement. Most of our projects are pretty successful, so over like 500 and more, which is pretty good into the interactive world. Some of them go beyond the millions, and usually, and some of them reach like 10 to 20,000 people. And win prizes also sometimes. So basically that's the general vision of it from our perspective at the NFB.
Yes, so from Arte, we have a very precise knowledge about our starting point, which is actually the audience of Arte TV, which is 60% of people who watch content on Arte website watch the replay. So we know that this is our starting point, and then from that on, we try, of course, to enlarge it as much as possible. So we do that either through collaboration with NFB or other international partners. That is to reach an international audience. And then, what I explained earlier, we also try to push it a little bit further on other platforms and to conquer audience where it really is, which is on social media, on video platforms. And yes, and about the age, because you were saying 18 to 35, and you're really lucky because our audience is much, much older. Like Artist TV audience is average audience is 60, and on our website it's 40, which is much younger than the TV audience, but still a quite old audience. So old audience, I mean it's an adult audience, mature. So we are actually, that's why we try to conceive formats for younger people. That's why I mentioned ET at the end. So we know that Instagram has, of course, a much younger audience. And in proposing some content specifically, we try to reach also younger people. And yes, just the general numbers, speaking of pure statistics, Arte website has around 11 million visitors every month, and when we produce interactive websites for web documentaries, it really depends, but it can go up to 500,000, but some of them are around 200,000. And with some web series, we were quite successful. Like I mentioned, Tu mourras moins bête, but also a fictional series called Ploop. We had an average of 1 million views, video views.
That's really good numbers. SBS's audience profile is probably very similar to Arte, very old. Sorry, not very old, just more mature. Males as well. For some reason, it's like my dad is the core demographic of SBS on television. So I suppose as a public broadcaster, we're trying to always engage with a younger demographic. So 18 to 34 would be ideal. But also sort of the behaviours of younger people is one that's probably going to be more in line with understanding how some of the stuff that we do works. So it depends for every project. In terms of numbers, like I said, SBS does about 6.5 million unique browsers a month. Our online interactives, the most successful one's probably The Boat, which is about 500,000 unique browsers at the moment. But yeah, they generally, sort of, what we call them, they're slow burners. They don't have necessarily a huge amount of audience to begin with, but it has a regular audience that comes back to it because the themes are, for good or bad, they're ones that don't go away. They're evergreen, and so the benefit with SBS is that because it's a network, you can connect the project to other arms of the business and kind of remind people that it exists and give it some more oxygen from time to time as well.
I can say a few words for us. The same as Arte, the audience of the channels of France Télévisions is quite old, so we have to build a new audience each time for this kind of project. And our target is quite the same as yours, is between 15 to 25, sometimes to 30. And that takes time each time to find the audience and to engage, and we try to work a lot with social media and social networks to build this audience. The first project I show you, that girl, is a 3-year-old project, and it started with not so many audience, and today is very big community, but it took 3 years to build it. So each time we have really to think how to catch this audience and how to go with this, but it's always young audience, of course.
Hello, my name is Nevish. I come from Macedonia, Holistic Film. One brief question to Richard. What I liked in the tone of your communication is that you are not doing transmedia because of the transmedia, nor you are using technology because of the hype that it takes in the moment, but you rather tailor your efforts toward the projects, right? I'm curious about the talents that you use for different projects. Are they tailored to different projects, or you are the same group of people that uses programmers and videographers? What do you use as a talent to produce final product?
Thanks for that question. That's really important to ask. Each project has its own, how to say that, his own component of expertise. But almost all projects have what we call the founding trio, which is basically someone who owns the editorial, someone who owns the technology, and someone who will own the overall experience, so the artistic appearance of it. So this is, I could say, the only constant thing. Each project, depending on the technology, those three people have to change, of course. So if we're into a physical installation, usually there's a different kind of programmer, different kinds of tools to use. If we do VR, mostly, well, there's two main engines, so we have to work with programmers who do Unreal or Unity. So it's really project by project, but there is that trio that is almost always there. And then depending on the nature of it, the second circle, we call it, is the overall expertise that is more connected to the editorial and experiential. So like botanist, economist, philosophic or people, or any kind of expertise. And then on the experiential, well, you'll go into game designers, all the vast family of interaction designers.
So I am just curious for the many of you who are associated with national broadcasters and who have this kind of mission to serve the people of your country or the public of your country, how do you work internationally with makers and producers from other countries? Kind of where, like, what are the limits of what is appropriate to produce for Canadian viewers, for French viewers? How do you think about kind of international co-production and collaboration inside of the kind of public broadcasting mission?
Perhaps you guys want to answer that one. I can give you just a really short answer. We haven't really done a co-production with international. I mean, we have attempted. We have the problem of distance to some extent. I suppose, but we're always open. We haven't cracked the sort of secret yet, but we have certainly had discussions at different levels about projects. For Australia, because it is a public broadcast from Australia, there has to be an element that is of the story that resonates with Australian audiences, and obviously the production team as well needs to have an Australian element. But I mean, a lot of the projects that all of us have worked on are global themes, and so you can always shape them and craft them to target particular audiences. But these folks have a lot more experience doing that, so.
I mean, there are two aspects to it, no? One is the creators. Do we work with foreign creators? And we very much like to, especially because Arte is a European channel, so we try to address a European audience, not only French. But then there's the practical question to it. How do you get the project done, etc. So it has actually not really happened very often, although through some co-productions. Actually, the way it worked until now is that part of the teams were from France or from Germany, and part of the team was from Canada. And so we tried to work on a mix of putting creative teams together, and yes, to get also through a mix of ideas a little bit further in yes, in addressing a topic or a story.
It really starts from the people.
Yes.
So this is how we became to work with Arte, with France Télévisions. It's just meeting people within festivals or those kinds of events, finding a connection with them, a human one, even before a content one, I would say, or editorial intention one. Then afterwards, between France and Canada, it's kind of easy. It's never easy to co-produce, but there are general agreement between the two countries within the film business, and both countries have financing bodies within new media production. So once you find those person you want to work with or produce with, I should say, then you make sure that there is a real financing capability to actually pull your financial structure together. So that's the next step. Often we've tried to do it with lots of different countries. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. We're still keeping on trying anyway. There's all sorts of obstacles. We've been trying to produce with Colombia for so long, but depending on the government that oversees the country, well, then sometime you come to almost the signature and then there's a shift. So those are the reality of finding the financial structure. After that, the tough part is really to find the creative teams. One key is really to have, well, for us in Canada, it needs to be 50% key creators need to be Canadian. And by key creators is basically the trio I was referring to, so really the close circle. With Arte, it's different because we've partnered, we each take lead on one project, one at a time. So the overall agreement is 50-50, but each project is not. So those are kind of you have to find ways, but you really have to understand how financing those kinds of projects work in every country if you want to achieve a co-production.
Well, I have to say that I'm half Colombian, and Colombia has opened recently with this Canadian Media Fund, new media. So you will produce with Colombia afterwards. So I hope that will be good, and I will be there probably to help to make this more smooth. Okay, then last question, it's my question. I want to finish with this roundtable because we have 10 minutes. And I want to ask you this question, and I want to start from Susanna, and coming from till here, till Jean-Paul. Let's put it this way. Let's say that in Spain or Latin American countries, we are playing in a second league, in a third league, okay? Not in the first major league that you are playing, okay? What kind of strategies and mechanisms do we have to implement in the forthcoming years in order to play, or at least try to play, in first or major leagues? What could be these 2 or 3 mechanisms, trends, elements? You can say whatever, but please, different things that we can just write down and then we can develop, because I think that more than ever we need. Because here we have a lot of good ideas, we have a lot of energy, but we don't have money. And in the end, this is the problem. We don't have money. So please give us your help and your knowledge, and let's take your time because we need these ideas.
So it depends what you mean by first league. Do you hear me? Yes. Yeah. If by first league you mean that your project is produced by a public broadcaster, or just if you want that your project is done, it's produced. So you can always find alternatives like new players, new ways of co-producing and being produced. I think that I mean, seeing how it works in Switzerland, Germany, and France, doing international co-production is possible. it's possible also if you think about having public broadcaster not only as TV broadcaster but also as radio broadcaster, as newspapers. They are big players and willing and accepting new stories coming from abroad. And then maybe you have to see how you can work with partnerships, sponsoring, finding money in NGOs, and other ways of finding money than the ancient way, meaning having a public broadcaster with some public funds. So that's what I would say.
Thanks. Luis Richard? Some ideas?
Yeah, so the way we worked with Argentina was very interesting. So they do have a Encuentro, which is a publicly funded media. But they were referring to what you just said, is really, okay, how to bridge visions and expertise. So the first key is, well, just gonna do a parenthèse. I think you need either time, money, and creative expertise. Those are your three major ingredients. And then you need to have at least two of them. So if you don't have the money, you need to build times and creative experience. So workshops like you're leading is key, and this is how we work with Argentina. Is we went there for a number of days, created a workshop. In preparation to, we've scouted with partners the best talents within the different universities. We asked them to pitch a project, but not as much the project for itself, but more how do they frame their ideas. And then we moved on to the selection of, okay, so we're going to work in Canada with those, and in Argentina, those people. And it outputted a project which is, I find really cool. If you've seen it, it's called Primal. So it's both in French and in Spanish and in English, because we do everything bilingual in Canada. And it's a around the world scream. So basically it's kids from Argentina and Quebec, mostly, just screaming out loud to their screen. And this idea really came from the group. So because they were trying to find what is common to us. And they found the relation to violence to be one, but the different relation to violence. And then afterwards you go into all the stuff we just talked before, but really to start with those three ingredients. The money is probably the toughest because you have to go political to actually get it. But if you create example and you have success, then it helps you. Yeah? I think so, yeah. Well, even if you go private, there's lots of, if you go to Google, or there's other levels of policy, but it is politics also.
Annick, some ideas?
Yes. It's at France Television, it's a political choice to decide to put some money in this kind of project. So you have to provoke this political choice, but you have to be creative too. I can give the example of Data Girl. To produce a 90 minutes documentary at the Nouvelles Écritures, we don't have enough money to put in this project. And the CNC and the classical financier, it wasn't enough. So the producer asked us if we were okay to go into a crowdfunding. And we made it, and it was really interesting because they already have a very big community. So the community react quickly, and over the financial participation, they were participating also for the ideas and the concept. But each time, if we want to go further, we have to be creative also with the financial part, not only with the creative and construction and storytelling and so on. So that is a interesting way, be creative there too, not to stay in the classical financial construction, just find other way.
I would say look into indie gaming also. They have a way of building their project that is really inspiring. They prototype, so they're able to show before they need the total financing for the big thing. That's a good avenue, I think.
Okay. In this way, hackathons and kind of experiments could help in order to create and to test and whatever, right? Because in the end, you agree that it's a question of money. Of course, there's a lot of, energy and creative capacities and abilities, but in the end, if the government or the public or private funds don't bet about that, it's difficult to get to produce, because here in Spain, what we are feeling these days is like there's a lot of energy and a lot of good things in terms of creation and researching on new narratives, but on the other hand, there's people are I wouldn't say sad, but you say there's no money, there's no investing, because we are suffering a very profound crisis here in Spain. So governments are not focused on putting money in interactive development or creating some kind of experimenting like this stuff. So in the end, and for us it's very difficult to go to Arte or National Film Board as well, because it's outside, it's another language as well, it's another market. So it's kind of a vicious circle, which is difficult to get into this field for us as well. So hopefully we can, but this is the reality. So Lily?
Yeah, I think a lot of things have been said. Definitely the independent game industry is an example of how sometimes you just build something in your garage. With time and creativity, you can push it further. I think there's something else that Susanna mentioned. Which it's a whole huge creative market completely outside of public financing and massive financing is YouTube. When you just see there's so much, there's a lot of very bad stuff on YouTube, but there's also a lot of very good series. Like I just saw the other day, and now I don't have the title, like always when you sit on a panel and you have to give the example. I saw this science show made out of just writing, good scientific writing, and very humorous, very funny, with some motion design, with some graphics, not done with a lot of money, and it has actually a much bigger audience than our programs, but really. And also, web series, like fictional series, they don't need the public money to exist. And I saw some very good series from Spain as well. So it's not an industry, but it's a whole creational world that exists without any substantial financing infrastructure. And it's another generation. It's probably a completely different model of production, but it's there, and it has more audience sometimes than the stuff we produce.
I was talking specifically on non-fiction, interactive and transmedia non-fiction, not so in gaming.
The science program I'm speaking of is documentary. It's really about science.
Yeah, in gaming.
And it's and gaming.
Games in Spain are one of the seventh economy in Europe or in the world.
But maybe the fictional series can inspire as a model.
Yeah.
Because you don't need as much money for documentary as you need for fiction. So
short formats.
And it's very much about writing, and very good writing.
Okay.
But it's easy to say.
Thanks, Lily.
And Arnaud, sorry, and don't forget, if you want to talk about public fundings, that you can always go to a bigger production structure, and they take care to bring you there where it has to be. Meaning also, don't forget the Swiss television. They are very fond and keen of transmedia projects. They have fundings, and they are sometimes lacking of content. So the problem is the reversed one. you have a lot of ideas and creativity, and you're lacking of the financing. In Switzerland, it's the other way around. So maybe this could be a matchmaking tool, if you want to stay public.
Okay. Jean-Paul?
It's a big question. I don't know that I mean, I think everything that the panel has said it resonates, it's true. I think there are, public broadcaster, we rely very heavily on the screen funding bodies. I don't know if that exists here in Spain. Independent, other bodies that fund filmmaking, just general films. As they touched on, they are moving a lot more into interactive, into multimedia storytelling because I suppose that's kind of future-proofing for the way that audiences are going to interact with content. But I think it's all changing, right? I mean, TV, I work for a TV station, right? The numbers for TV have been steadily declining over the years, right? So, perhaps I'm not sure how that translates here in Spain, but we are all public, even commercial broadcasters are quite rapidly having to think about techniques and methods to change the model so that they maintain audience and they maintain relevance, and then they can still sort of do their work. And so as content creators, at least as far as the lens in Australia, you've got new areas, new pathways to get your story out that don't rely on public broadcasting or even just traditional commercial broadcasting. We see a lot of marketing and advertising agencies who are, in Australia at least, hungry for the more sort of experiential, deeper connection kind of content, not too dissimilar, I would imagine, to the content that you guys create. Whereas before they were used to just very high turnover, high impact kind of short bits of content. They're now branching out and creating longer experiences for audiences. For an industry of filmmakers, that's that pathway to get your story out there is a lot broader now than it used to be even 5 years ago in Australia. But yeah, I think it's not an easy. There's no silver bullet sort of answer, I think, to that question.
There's no.
No, and you need triggers. I mean, another example in New Zealand is their screen funding bodies. Very, very old school. They only used to do film and television. And through, you probably know them, the DocEdge Story Lab people, and it's not too dissimilar to this conference here, this organization. It's taken them about 4 years, but they've been doing this sort of thing where they bring in people in, showcasing projects. And that fund, that film fund has recently announced an interactive documentary fund to the tune of $1 million New Zealand dollars, which I don't know, it's probably like 50,000 euros or something. But that through the work that you're doing and this organisation, it does, you do need to kind of continue to do that and sort of upwards manage sort of the awareness of this medium and the opportunities, because it's really those big government bodies that are going to open up their purses to facilitate this kind of work to happen.
Okay, thank you. So here in Docs Barcelona we have some kind of mechanisms like that. One of them is interactive pitch. We have a huge industry, and we have we have speed meetings, we have Latin pitch, and we have an interactive pitch. Thank you, and let's finish with a big round of applause for our speakers of today.